All right, we're going to bring in our first ever guest on the other guys. You guys have probably seen him on Twitter the last couple weeks, lighting everybody up. He was a football player at Hofstra. I think he was with a couple teams in the NFL for a little while. Please welcome in Chris Manno. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from, and a little bit about your Jets fandom and how you got here.
All right, so thank you all for having me for starters. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I grew up on Long Island. I was always a baseball kid. My best friends talked me into playing football as a senior, so I started when I was 17 years old, so the journey was a little crazy. Walked on to Hofstra a couple of days before my, freshman season. I had one of my coaches, who's a legend in high school, make a call out there to get me an opportunity, which I'm, forever grateful for. Got my ass beat for a year as a walk-on, just kind of running scout team. Wound up getting offered a full scholarship as a redshirt freshman. Played 4 years afterwards. I didn't really light it up very much. I was a special teams captain. Probably caught 25 balls as a senior, so I didn't really go nuts, but I was still pretty raw. After that, I walked on. I paid to try out for an Arena League team in New Jersey that nobody ever heard of in a real dumpy building, and I went all pro. I used that film to get down to IMG Academy, where I, knew somebody who said, come on down. If you can kind of hang with the guys down here, we'll let you stay. If you slow us down, we're going to send you home. And I got to do combine training with Russ Wilson, Kirk Cousins, Tannehill, Sanu, Kuechly, Josh Norman, like you name it, a gamut of NFL studs. I guess I didn't do horrible. Where I'll tell you a little story later. Whenever you guys want to get into it, you guys, we're supposed to talk about like some of my favorite players growing up. Vinny Testaverde was the guy who got me a workout. So if you guys, whenever you want to touch on that, it's a pretty cool story. So we'll get there. And lo and behold, I got a workout, Kansas City. I guess I did decent at the tryout. They kept me on. I played all 4 preseason games, and was like one of the last guys released. Kept working. Got to work. Went back down to IMG. I trained with Cam every day for about 3 months, 3 times a day. He made a call over, said, "Listen, maybe we can give this guy an opportunity to work out for us." They signed me up. I mean, I went down there. I worked out. They signed me on the field. I aced rookie mini camp, and then I fractured my tibia right after that. So that's all she wrote. So
All
that's
right,
it in a
so
nutshell. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's good stuff. And so tell us a little bit about growing up on Long Island and being a Jets fan. And, Jake and I always talk about how when we were growing up, and you're about our age too, I think. I
Okay.
think you're a year older than me. Like when we were growing up, the Jets were pretty good, right? So all this like same old Jet shit from the last 10 years, that was kind of a new thing to us as we started to come in because from like, 97 to 2010, they were making the playoffs at like a 50% clip.
Well, I guess, look, like life, it's like a peaks and valleys thing as a Jet fan, man. It depends how far back you go. When I was real young, they were 1-15. So they were terrible. And then they built it up. They got Curtis Martin on. They got Vinny Testaverde on. They got Wayne Chrebet on, and for a couple of years, yeah, they saw some success. And then obviously, where we are now. But I grew up, like I said, I mean, Long Island lends us to become Jets fans because Hofstra was right here.
Yep.
Hofstra was the home of the Jets training camp for like my whole like youth. So my
Yep.
pop would take me out there and we would watch. As I got old enough to drive, me and my buddies would go out there on summers. It was blazing hot, but I'd get to watch guys, which was so crazy. Like I said, I always grew up playing baseball, but like once I played in a football game, I never went back to baseball again. Like I just loved it instantly. So getting to see these guys like up close. I mean, Lavernius Coles, I'd watch. Santana Moss, I would watch. Obviously, Wayne. I mean, look at me.
Yep.
That's the guy that kind of brought me on. Like that's where my love for this came from.
I was going to say
Constantly when I
impossible not to bring up Wayne Corbett talking about
no
Hofstra and training camp and being a walk on and
right
all that.
right, which sucked a little because I think by the time I got there, he kind of had a little beef with Hofstra. So like the dude never came around. So I would used to get so I think he came to one practice and I actually really did well. And I heard him ask about me, which was like the highlight of my like Hofstra life, which was real cool. But yeah, I think he kind of
Dude,
beefed
if
with our
Wayne
coaches a
Corbett
little
said
bit.
anything about my athletic ability, that would be the highlight of my entire life,
Yes,
forever.
yes,
So the fact
yes, it
that
was.
that's
It
not
was.
like your peak, which is understandable given
That's
the
close to my
history
peak.
that you
Let's be
just
real.
took us to, like it's a pretty awesome life so far.
It was
And
cool.
so
Yeah, I was very fortunate.
And I know we talked about the Jets as a little bit of peaks and valleys, and we were talking a
Yes.
little before this about, why we wanted to bring you on. And
Mm-hmm.
as Paul mentioned, you've been active in the Jets Twitter space now that you are out and proud as a Jets fan. So
Yes.
wanted to get on what just for our listeners who may not have seen all the tweets, give us your current read on the Jets, like as a whole, and what you think the next steps this organization needs to take in, kind of considering that the season from all pragmatic standpoint is pretty much over at this point.
Okay, so I want to preface everything we're about to do with, and anybody who's going to listen to this who somehow got the inclination that I hated the Jets. I get it. Look, but the way I came up, if you're hard on people that you love and expect a lot out of, right? Like if the Jets were still that 1-15 club, I wouldn't have expected a lot out of them. Therefore, what I'm getting, I'd have been cool with. At this point, I expect players on this team to shine. We have guys here who could be among the elite at their position. So when they're not, I get on them, right? Same as any coach would have got on me. And the team, we expected them to come in. I thought they were more than a one-man show this year. And when one guy goes down and the thing implodes, you call them on it, man. That's how I was brought up. And I don't think from the replies I've gotten, like it's probably like little more than 50-50. Like I think a lot of people are where I'm at. I can't believe that people thought I hated him because I've been tweeting about him for years. It's just you don't get any real, I didn't get any real, what's the word? Traction, I guess, until I started killing him. But I think I just echo what a lot of people felt like. So where do I feel like the Jets are right now? Coming into the year, I think we probably overrated them a bit. Now in hindsight, I still stand on till this day that any quarterback back there would be dead by now. So, Aaron Rodgers, no Aaron Rodgers, sure they would have done better. I think he would have probably run the offense, far cleaner and, less hangups. But I don't think prime Vic with some of these offensive line games is getting away. I think people crush Zach Wilson probably way more than I think he deserves. Did he play great? No. Do I think anybody back there in his situation would have played great? No. What do I think now? Like currently where I think they are, yeah, I think the season is probably, for all intents and purposes, it's a wrap now. They're mathematically still there, but I think we both know how that goes. They'll be alive for a couple more weeks, but I think we're probably in a position where they need to bring Aaron back. Well, I've been hearing so much of that lately. We've got the first franchise quarterback in 50 years that chose us and wants to be here. And people are saying, look at all these scrubs he brought in. They killed the team. And I'm like, guys, he brought in like 3 bottom of the roster guys that should have never seen the field if everything goes according to plan. Like he brought, if getting Aaron Rodgers here takes signing Tim Boyle to a veteran's minimum and getting Randall Cobb in here on a veteran's minimum to maybe catch a punt or two during the year and teach Garrett Wilson how to be a professional, like, come on, guys, what are we doing? Like they're killing him for that. And Alan Lazard has been terrible. It's like, guys, look, it was a real weak free agent receiver class. Like other teams would have signed Alan Lazard. Like don't think he would have not gotten anybody to sign him if the Jets didn't. So we were all on board with that. So I'd be hypocritical to get on him for that now because I was jacked up about Alan Lazard. I thought he'd be a great number 2 to Garrett Wilson. And I think next year, if Aaron Rodgers comes back healthy, he's going to get the best out of Alan Lazard again. And he'll be a 50-catch guy who gets 600, 700 yards. We'll be happy because he does some of the bully work down there. And that's what I think we'll get. So I think, the drill, man. People they're so quick to love when it's good and so quick to hate when it's bad. So that's where I think we are right now.
Yeah, so let's drill into the quarterback thing a little bit because that's been like the hottest button thing right now, and I think
white hot.
And I think we all went through it with Sam Darnold also, right? Where like we got to a point where half the fan base was in, half the fan base was out, and it was like a religious war, and you couldn't talk to each other. And here we are 3 years later, and we're in the same spot with what was supposed to be a backup quarterback, and I think. I think that you were able to put the words together in a way that not many other people were, in the sense that, like, who would succeed in this environment, right? Like, would Trevor Lawrence have been good here? He probably would have been better, but does he survive, right? And so is it that these quarterbacks are not who we thought they were, or is it that they're coming into a broken organization and the Jets are actually breaking them and kind of, I don't want to say ruining careers, but they're kind of putting them in a bad spot where you do have to go and serve some time as a backup elsewhere, like a Geno Smith did, and like Sam Darnold's doing right now. And we'll see what happens with that. And we'll see if Zach Wilson gets another opportunity if and when it's done for him here. Like, is this an organizational issue where the Jets are treating, and I said this on last week's episode, the Jets almost treat offense historically, and it's not just this coach, it's previous regimes before this, they treat offense as like a risk reduction exercise rather than an opportunity to go score points. They're constantly saying, let's win with defense, let's limit mistakes, let's do this and that. So do you see, like, where do you see the organization in terms of, is it broken? Is it killing these guys, or are these guys just busts?
So I think we always have, it gets lost on guys early that, guys, the vast majority of first round quarterbacks bust. Like, they don't really turn out great. If you look at every draft, 4 or 5 of them get picked, and if 1 or 2 of them turn out to be like 8-10 year guys, you're thrilled, because for the majority of the time, and look, they come into, when you get picked 2 overall, you're not coming into a stable environment, right? You're coming to a team that won 4 games last year. So it's a rarity that guys succeed right out the gate. I mean, we've seen a couple of instances like Cam came flying out of the gate, but when the best coaches on planet Earth get film on you, then changes are made and they make adjustments and guys come back down to earth. I've been hearing for 2 weeks now, but Josh Dobbs came in and did this, and Tommy DeVito's doing that. And I'm like, guys, what are we doing right now? Like, you've seen 10 reps on these guys. They haven't been able to get the film necessary for coaches to scheme against them and beat them. I think this begins and ends in the front office and the head coach. I mean, if you've been with me now for a couple of weeks, you know I don't think very highly of the head coach. I think he's phenomenal human being, he seems like, but he seems to me like a glorified defensive coordinator. He's a DC, and that's what he does. I think the mark of a good coach is a couple of things, right? You have your team ready to come out and play every week. The Jets, despite having this elite defense, it's like they don't turn it on to the middle of the second quarter, right? That's not conducive to a young quarterback succeeding. Right, spotting a team 7 every week is not the move, right? I think these personal fouls and ridiculous penalties they take every week, that falls down on the coach, right? I think time management in a couple of these games, that falls on the coach. I think so much, and I watch a Tommy DeVito come off the field, and I watch a Josh Dobbs come off the field, and these guys are getting coaching. So DeVito comes off the field, Daboll grabs him, and he makes sense of what he's seeing. And Kevin O'Connell grabs Josh Dobbs, and he makes sense of what he's seeing. And Zach Wilson comes off the field, and he's sitting on the side of the bench. And it's like a great shot every week where he's got his beanie on, and he's like gazing out into space. And I'm like, how is nobody coaching this guy? And then Garrett Wilson will come over and maybe offer him a word of encouragement. And I'm like, guys, that's not going to do it. That's not going to be what gets this kid where he needs to be. So do I think he's played great? No. Do I think he's getting the help that he needs to thrive? Absolutely no. I think it's malpractice from Joe Douglas, who's getting a free pass every year. The guy's had let's be real, 1 great round in 1 draft. He's plucked a couple of decent guys in the 4th, 5th round, whatever. But Michael Carter's gone now, right? So he was one of the guys we used for a while. He's been bad. I think Michael Clemens, everybody thought Michael Clemens, he's big, he's mean, he looks cool. Michael Clemens hasn't been great. He's been a penalty waiting to happen, and we're talking more about him fighting with guys after games than he is performing. So that's a deal, right? When you pencil in a 40-year-old left tackle who didn't put pads on in the preseason as your starter to protect your quarterback, that's not conducive to success. Elijah Vera Tucker, coming off a major injury. We got nothing for him there. We're penciling him in. We're good. Mekhi Becton hasn't played in 2 years. So that's 3/5 of our offensive line who have a terrible injury history. The fact that we're not chock full of depth there is criminal. Mm-hmm. And then look, you put everything on your 40-year-old quarterback, who I'm rooting for, and I really like him a lot. I think he's done a phenomenal job since he's been here. But to not have a real backup for him. And we've seen this since the Sanchez days. These guys are afraid to have any competition for their young quarterbacks because I don't know if it's the way the world is now, but I guess they deem these guys so mentally, breakable that if you give them any competition, you're afraid they're going to wilt. And to succeed here in this city, that is not the move. You got to have somebody there. I think Zach from jump this year should have been the quarterback 3, right? Let him be QB3. All right, let him sit back and redshirt because I think all of us from Hard Knocks, granted Hard Knocks is scripted or whatever, we watched Hard Knocks. We watched him play in the preseason. I seen some glimpses against KC, and the kid looked like he was moving in the right direction. So I think 8 more months of learning from somebody better than you. Look, what do we get him back at 24? And maybe, the kid's not like, I mean, he's broken now, but I don't think he was. I thought he was making strides. Granted, they might have been little ones, but I saw things in him that I was like, look, physically, the kid has all the tools to succeed in today's league. You can say what you want. The kid can move. He can run. He can extend a play. He's got a cannon for an arm, right? A flick of the wrist, he simply can throw the football. And we've seen it. Like he made a play to Conklin in 2-minute drill a couple of weeks ago where he avoids a guy and makes a crazy hard throw. Hits Conklin right up the seam. Beautiful shot. He hit Garrett Wilson on the 4-yard line in a soft spot in a cover 2 where the ball hits Garrett Wilson in the arms and he drops it. So it's like he's doing nice things occasionally. So they're in there. I just think, look, you need seasoning, man. The kid wasn't ready to go, which is, part Zach Wilson, your 3rd-year pro, and part on the incompetent front office and coaches, man.
So
yeah, I'm gonna jump you, Jake. I just want to hit on something that he brought up there. So you talked about how Dobbs has O'Connell when he comes off the field, and DeVito has Dable,
and a phenomenal offensive line, by the way. The Vikings got a great offensive line. They're not comparable to the Jets. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. And so, for 2.5 years, we've been getting those shots on the sideline of Zach that you're talking about, of him just sitting there staring off into space by himself or looking at a tablet by himself or whatever. And I think everybody's always interpreted that as nobody likes Zach, right? And I think probably what we should have been saying the whole time is how come nobody is there with him? How come nobody's coaching him? And I think you saw a little bit of a jump in those games where Rodgers was on the sideline, where he was able to talk to somebody after he came off. And it's not a coincidence that maybe he performed a little better in those games. The Raiders game was one of them. He didn't score in that Raiders game, but there were a couple touchdowns called back. He did play better overall. And the other thing I think you brought up is that they think that these kids are so mentally weak that they can't give them any competition. And that's another thing we've been hearing about Zach for 2.5 years now, is that he's mentally weak. And at this point, I don't know how you could say he is mentally weak. Like, the kid has gotten bashed nonstop from the moment he got here. And outside of a bad press conference last year, he's never thrown anybody under the bus. He's never said it was the line's fault. He's never called out any of the things that he probably could call out, and he's just kept coming out there over and over again, and he's tough. He's gotten hit 1,000,000 times. He can be a physical runner when he has the ball in his hands for a smaller guy. And so, you kind of take all those things together. And then the other thing you brought up that I wanted to hit was, you kind of said this a little bit at the beginning too. When you have good players, you expect good things. And there's been kind of a tone on Twitter the last few weeks that you can't touch Brees and you can't touch Garrett Wilson. And the reality is, they haven't made all the plays that they're supposed to make. Have they made some circus catches? Does Zach throw probably a hard to catch short ball? I think so. I think probably sometimes he's putting too much zip on there when they're short routes. But these guys have not done everything they're supposed to do. And then you kind of factor Lazard into that as well. And I wonder if there was kind of a mental fallout. And the obvious answer is yes, but I want to hear it from a former player's perspective. If there was a mental fallout that kind of has caused a lack of focus across the team, from losing Rodgers, from having to play with Zach again, from having something that you thought you had in your arms and it gets ripped away from you so quickly.
Well, I mean, Garrett's the one I primarily